Now, let's get back down to Canberra now and follow up on some of the big issues of the day. I'm joined by the Communications Minister, Paul Fletcher. Thanks for joining me, Paul. First up, the GDP figures showing a growth of 0.5% in the last quarter of last year, a bit higher than expectations. Good news, shows that the economy it was chugging along, not exactly at breakneck speed, but was going along all right. But of course, it been hit by, not so much the bushfires, I would argue, but certainly by the coronavirus in this quarter. Are you worried we're going to sink into negative growth?
Well, look, I'll leave comments on GDP growth to the Treasurer and the Prime Minister. We've been managing the economy in a steady and consistent fashion. As you say, the GDP growth number that came out today, some people had predicted a significantly lower number. So growth is important. We're focused on steady, consistent management of the economy, and it's in very good hands with Treasurer Josh Frydenberg.
No doubt, though, we're going to see a stimulus package revealed soon. If it's going to prevent the economy going into recession, or certainly going backwards for a quarter, it'll need to be money that can be spent pretty quickly, right? It'll need to inject some cash into the economy, some stimulus into the economy very quickly, in a way that, for instance, infrastructure projects perhaps wouldn't do.
Well, Chris, I'll leave comments on economic management issues to the Treasurer and to the Prime Minister.
OK then, well that gives us plenty of time to talk about the ABC. Were you as disgusted as I was that the ABC would use the tragedy of the summer's bushfires to demand more money from taxpayers yesterday?
Well, Chris, I would not use that language myself. The ABC has put to the government that its emergency broadcasting responsibilities have caused it to incur extra expenses because of this very severe bushfire season. What I've said to the ABC Managing Director, both privately and publicly, is that if the ABC brings forward detailed evidence of the extra costs that it has incurred by reason of discharging its emergency broadcaster responsibilities through this severe bushfire season, then of course the government will consider that. I would make the point that many media organisations have done terrific work during this bushfire season, including the ABC, but also of course commercial organisations, radio and TV. Everybody has, I think, shown a great Australian spirit in making sure that information was relayed quickly to affected communities about the bushfire threats they were facing, so that people could respond as quickly as possible.
Indeed, we've highlighted that on my media program and praised media, including the ABC, for their coverage. But the ABC is funded to cover news. How can they come back to you and say when news happens, they need more money to cover it?
Well, the ABC does receive very significant funding. Over the 3-year current funding period, almost $3.2 billion, and indeed in last year's budget there was an additional sum of a bit over $40 million over 3 years for local and regional news gathering. And in fact, when you add up that together with the ABC's existing funding, despite the indexation pause, their funding is growing every year over the 3-year period. Nevertheless, the ABC has put this position publicly. That's obviously a matter for board and management. They have responsibility for managing the ABC. They've got statutory independence. And what I have said to ABC board and management and to the Managing Director, both publicly and privately, is if you can demonstrate the additional costs that you've incurred because of this severe bushfire season, this severe summer, then please bring that forward and the government will consider it.
But Paul Fletcher, they have covered natural disasters in this country many times before. They have covered worse summers of bushfires, more damaging bushfires in Victoria in 2009, in South Australia and Victoria in 1983. They didn't use those as an excuse to put their hand out for more money. What's different this time?
Well, I've made it clear to the ABC that they will need to demonstrate the specific additional costs they've incurred. I've invited them to bring that forward. As yet, that hasn't happened, but I have invited them to do that. and so it'll be. I'll confine my comments to the particular situation that we're facing at the moment, rather than commenting on historical matters.
They're using their own climate alarmism here, aren't they, as a means to try and put the hit on taxpayers for more money. They're saying this was a bad bushfire season and they're all going to be bad like this in the future because of climate change. So it's a horrible mix of opportunism and climate alarmism in a bid to get more taxpayers' money.
Well, the specific proposition that the ABC has put to me and to the government is that because of a severe bushfire summer and because of their responsibilities as the emergency broadcaster, that has caused them to incur additional expenses above and beyond business as usual. So my response has been that they should document those incremental costs. How many more people did how many more hours? How was that specifically related to the bushfires and so on?
But they have a budget of over $1 billion. If they wanted to find, even if their own figures of $5 million, they could save that from some of the ridiculous spending we've seen elsewhere. In fact, you've put in a letter to them how they could save a lot of money by rationalising their real estate holdings.
Look, I've made the point to ABC, to the Managing Director, that when we look at large commercial media organisations like Seven or Nine, in both cases those companies have moved to purpose-built headquarters in Sydney. In Seven, that's happened in recent years. Nine is doing that later this year, and indeed Nine told the Stock Exchange recently that they expect to get significant efficiencies as a result of moving to new purpose-built facilities. And of course, the media sector is changing very quickly. The nature of the services that broadcasters provide is changing. The nature of the technology they use is changing. And so it does present an opportunity to look at how you could move to new purpose-built facilities that embodied the very latest technology that was suitable for the most efficient mode of operating. Now, these are matters for ABC Board and Management. They have statutory independence. The way the Act is written is very clear. The Board has a duty under Section 8 to operate the ABC efficiently and for the maximum benefit of the Australian people. The ABC is in the process of developing a strategic plan, and I've suggested to them that one issue they might want to look at is the most efficient use of their property assets, and whether there's a case for withdrawing capital from existing significant property holdings and redeploying that into new, efficient, fit-for-purpose facilities.
The ABC headquartered nationally in Dubbo. I can't wait to see that. Just briefly, do you believe that the expansion of the ABC's free services onto digital platforms and online platforms would have contributed to the demise now of AAP wire services, which are going to shut down completely in June?
Look, I don't think I would draw that conclusion. I think what we've seen with AAP is that the entire media sector is going through huge transformation. In some sectors, digital sectors, there's great growth. We can look at the streaming services, which are growing at a very fast rate. In other sectors, there's significant contraction. And the management teams of all media organisations are looking to grow in the areas of expansion and to withdraw resources from areas where the market is contracting. And that appears to have been the decision made by AAP's shareholders, which of course include Nine Entertainment Limited, News Corp, Seven West Media and other major players in the Australian media sector. So those are commercial decisions that have been made by the shareholders of AAP. Obviously, that's challenging news for journalists who work at AAP, and I do note that there's been some suggestion from some of the shareholders that there may be opportunities for them to employ journalists directly in their own operations. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out.
Thanks, Minister. I appreciate your time.